We hear a lot these days about climate change, and if you're anything like me, you might wonder, what exactly is climate change? What causes climate change? Will it impact me? Is there anything I can do to help? Is there anything we can do to help? And what will this do to our fish? This week, we're going to do everything we normally do. We're going to visit Tom with his tank. We'll be out on the river with Gisell. Derek, Ryan, and Shelley are ready to answer questions from students like you. But we're also going to hear from a student down in the East Bay with his impressions of climate change. But we're going to start by hearing from a climate change expert. Laura Drath works for the Department of Fish and Wildlife out of our Sacramento area. So if you're ready, let's hear about climate change from an expert.
I'm here on the banks of the American River, where every fall Chinook salmon return to lay their eggs and complete their life cycle. We at the Department of Fish and Wildlife work to protect salmon and the habitats that they depend on for the benefit of future generations. One of the main threats facing salmon now is climate change. What does climate change have to do with fish? Quite a lot, as it turns out. But to really understand that, we're going to need to back up a bit. When we burn fossil fuels like coal, oil, and natural gas for energy, we release carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. That carbon dioxide acts like a heat-trapping blanket wrapped around the Earth, holding in heat and disrupting our climate. The more carbon dioxide we emit, the thicker that blanket gets, and the more serious the impacts. Here in California, the result is that our precipitation is falling as rain rather than snow, and that means that our snowpack is not as large. We need that snowpack to melt all through the spring and summer months, feeding our rivers with clean, cold water that salmon and steelhead depend on for their spawning. With more rain and less snow, our rivers are warmer, and that can lead to less oxygen in the water and more fungal and bacterial infections that can affect eggs, salmon fry, and even adult salmon that return to the river. Climate change poses other threats to salmon as well, which we'll address in a future video. But for now, I want to leave you with a question. What do we do about it? See you next time.
That was a great explanation, Laura. It makes a lot more sense to me now. I wonder, though, when you as a student hear climate change, what is it that you think? What is it that you feel? And I want to start this off by inviting Harshal to answer those questions for us. Harshal is a student at Sedgwick Elementary School, so if you don't mind, tell us, when you hear climate change, what do you think and what do you feel?
Hi everybody. How I feel about climate change is worried. I feel worried because it can be beneficial or it can turn out to be a disaster. It can turn out to be a disaster if an iceberg melts and it turns into a flood. It can be beneficial in a wildfire case because it gets rid of the dead and old trees for us and plants nutrients into the ground for new plants to grow. That is how I feel about climate change. Thank you.
Thanks for sharing that with us, Harshal. And now, if you're ready, let's go see what Tom's fish look like in his tank. Hey, Tom, are you ready for us?
Thanks, Ethan. That was a great question. To me, when I think about climate change, I think about what I can do personally to help balance environmental issues. And I feel responsible and empowered to make a difference. Like cleaning up trash, conserving natural resources, and getting outside more closely to both understand what's happening out there, to absorb myself in nature and enjoy that experience with my friends. And doing things like this to me is just wonderful, to be able to share something that I enjoy with you. So how does that relate to our tank and how fish will survive outside the tank? Let's take a closer look. All right, here we are in front of the tank. You can see that we are at 53 degrees, which is just right. It's nice and cool. The tank's clear. The fish are happy. Look at these guys. They've just about absorbed all their egg sacs. There's just a little bit of an egg sac left there, but a lot of them are still hiding out. They're hiding out between the rocks, but they're starting to look up and swim around, which is just awesome. So let's just hold it here and take a look at it. Actually, you know what? There's some really cool ones down there. See them under the rocks right there in the middle? That is just awesome. All right. So over the course of the past few weeks, we've watched these fish grow from eggs to where they are now. And it's awesome to see them today, isn't it? They're doing great. And we're doing everything we can in the tank. But talking about climate change to me also means thinking about releasing these fish soon and how this relates to the new challenges for the fish, like different temperature in the water or even dried up creeks and streams. And last year, we released in an area that had some deep pools. It was springtime, the water was flowing, but we go back there in the middle of the summer, and guess what? The stream's dried up with the exception of a few smaller pools. So we really have to be careful about where we release these and make sure there's enough flow to sustain a healthy habitat for them. So we can positively influence and reduce our carbon emissions in a few ways. And Gisell will show us these ways in just a few minutes. But first, let's ask Gisell. Gisell, when you think of the word climate change, what do you think of? And what do you feel?
Thanks, Tom, for the awesome question. When I hear the words climate change, I think about our future. I start to wonder how it's going to impact us, the fish, and our planet. I feel inspired to make a difference because there's a lot we can do. There are many ways we can protect the fish, ourselves, and the planet from climate change. One of the ways is by reducing our energy, using less energy. Let's look at ways we can do that. Let's say I'm home and I'm really cold. I'm going to use blankets instead of a heater because a heater uses lots of energy. These plastic bags take lots of energy to make and create lots of emission, which is bad for the environment. Not only is it a lot of energy, but we normally throw it away, which is a lot of plastic pollution. So instead of using bags like this, we can use reusable bags like this and other reusable material like water bottles and Tupperware. Another great way to use less energy and reduce our emissions is by walking or riding your bike instead of using cars. So far, we've talked about what we can do personally to help climate change, but it's also very important to work together to make a big difference. Another way to get your community involved and use your voice is by writing a letter to government officials who are working on climate change issues right now. I feel super hopeful that all of you are going to make a difference. I'm going to send this letter out, so let's head over to Shelly. Shelly, what do you think about when you hear the words climate change, and how do you feel?
Hey everyone! Thanks, Gisell, for that question. When I think about climate change, I think about how things are becoming more and more unpredictable, and how we're experiencing more and more record-breaking extreme events. I I feel sad for what's happening to our planet, and I feel worried. I feel worried for the wildlife and for the plants and for the rivers and the creeks and for my own community. But I also feel hopeful because the more that I learn and the more that I understand about climate change, the more that I can do to make a difference. And the more that I share what I know and share what I've learned and share the ways that we can help with others, it's really incredible what we can do when we all work together. It's the way that we're going to make a big difference. So thanks, Gisell, for sharing those awesome ways that we can protect the fish and ourselves and our planet. Now I'm wondering what the biologists think. Let's head over to Ryan first. Ryan, when you hear the words climate change, what do you think of? What do you feel?
Shelley, I've studied various aspects of climate change and how they impact marine and freshwater fisheries for over 2 decades. While I'm not a climate change expert, I have observed some disturbing trends, and while I discuss these issues with my colleagues, I often forget that for many people not in our field, climate change might not be a priority, or they may be unaware of its impacts. I worry people will be apathetic about climate change and accept that global warming, extreme weather events, and prolonged droughts as just a part of the new normal. However, whether the public realizes it or not, the reality is we are adapting and trying to battle climate change. We're trying to restore habitats to make them more resilient and reduce greenhouse gases. We are working on water conservation, improving energy efficiency, reducing pollution, and developing alternative energy sources. I'm optimistic of our efforts, but I do think we need to elevate combating climate change as a higher priority for all of us. I'm reminded of a poster that one of my grade school teachers had in her classroom. Think globally, act locally, which reflects my approach to climate change. Derek, when you think about climate change, what do you think? What do you feel?
That's a really difficult question, Ryan. Global climate change is happening right here, right now. At my favorite camping place in the mountains, seeing summer snowpack up in the peaks is a relatively rare occurrence today. For me, climate change looks like Rocky Mountain peaks without summer snow patches. At work, climate change looks like Steelhead creeks drying up before the fall rains. At home, climate change looks like a wildfire jumping the ridge and racing towards town. The climate change I see makes me feel scared. It's very easy to imagine future global climate change like a dystopian wasteland movie, devoid of nature and community. It may be fun to watch a movie about that bleak future, but I don't want to live in that story. Instead of worrying about global climate change, why not dream about the future we would rather live in? We can't return to the world we were born into. Our present condition could be a lot better, and future dystopia doesn't look like a good option. So why not work to make the future into a more beautiful, cooperative, and accessible place that we can all live in? Imagine the future you want to experience. Imagine the community and environment you would like to leave for the next generation. Right now, I'm thinking of a future with abundant trout and steelhead. Now, find other people who can help make your vision a reality. Work together to make those changes happen. Support the leaders who share your vision for the future, or maybe become one of those leaders. When I find that global climate change is making me feel scared, I try to instead think about climate change as an opportunity to remake our present into a more livable future for everyone.
Wow, that's a lot to think about. But there's hope because there's a lot that we can be doing. Now, you probably remember that we have this jar and we're trying to fill it with rocks. And every week, students and teachers write in and tell us what they're doing to help protect fish and their habitat. I had an interesting conversation with a teacher this week, and what she said was, you know, Ethan, there are more than 400 teachers in California all hatching trout in their classroom. And each of those teachers is doing a spectacular job of helping their students learn about fish, about habitat, and most importantly, perhaps, what humans can do to improve that habitat for fish. So I think she's right. And for each of those 400 teachers, each of you, we're going to put a rock in the jar. Now, it's a lot of rocks, more than I can put in one hand, so I'm going to pour them in. That made a huge difference, didn't it? That goes back to the value of people working together for the greater good. We're going to fill this jar. We've got 2 more weeks and we're almost there. So remember, your job is to send in your ideas on what you or your class are doing to help protect fish in their habitat. Be thinking about climate change. And we have to work individually through small actions, but we also need to work collectively to help make a better planet for us and a better planet for our fish.